Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So today you are on Strength-Based Approach with our web series, webinar 3 of 4. My name is Kendra Hansen, and I'm the Institute Director, and I will be teaching you about the Strength-Based Approach and continuing in our series. So thanks again for being here. Really appreciate it. And I will try to be concise, but also teaching this in a web-based platform. I'm going to explain a little bit more because in the in-person training, you'll have a list of handouts and things, which I'll make sure that we're reviewing in the web series as well. So thanks again. You've made it halfway, and we're going to start with an overview of strength-based skills. So we've gone over kind of the philosophical ideas of why this works, why Wellspring chose this, and then we're going to get into the actual skills. We'll look at a short activity that you will be completing through a different portion of this lesson, not necessarily in the PowerPoint, but I'll review it in the video today. And then we will also look at strength-based solution planning. So from a clinical perspective, you could call this strength-based treatment planning, but we want everyone who works at Wellspring to be comfortable with talking about solutions and the strength-based approach ideas with participants. So we're going to call it solution planning. And then how to get started with the strength-based approach. Oftentimes I tell people just try one or two things that make you feel pretty comfortable, and then we'll go from there. You can keep adding to it as you feel more confident and more comfortable. So to overview the strength-based skills, there's ways that you want to utilize the relationships that you're building when working with participants. And some of those ways include deep noticing and listening for resources. This just means really paying attention. It can be difficult when you're trying to manage a whole floor of girls or a whole van full of women on your way to a field trip or to a work training. But we want to be observant and listen for resources in the way that they're speaking. Resources meaning tools that will help you to know them better and to know their strengths better. We also want to look for strengths. Always be looking for ways that they've made a positive impact and ways that they are improving, and small steps, remember, lead to big changes. So what are some ways that you are observing and noticing these small steps that the participants are observing and working towards, and how can we kind of continue to encourage them? We also want to look at reframing. So what this means is reframing from the standpoint of, look, it's what you would automatically do if you're going to put a positive approach on your life's outlook. So, for example, I got a flat tire yesterday, and that is not a fun experience. But I was on my way somewhere, and it gave me a lot of quality time with my child. So that was a bonus to the experience that I wouldn't have otherwise had if he was in the nursery. And it gave me a new perspective on the moment. So while it's terrible to get a flat tire and be stuck on the side of the road for longer than I would have liked when it's really hot outside, I, on the other hand, had an opportunity to spend a little more quality time with my child. So again, I'm not saying that I would love to get a flat tire. That's not what I'm saying. So we're not kind of turning some bad situation into a positive, but we are looking for a positive within that negative situation. So we're reframing. And we'll go over that in more detail. Languaging. So it's all about the way we use our words. The last couple of webinars have been on that, and the positive way that we want to be solution focused in how we speak to participants and how we approach challenging situations. So it's all about the language that we choose to use and thinking about our words, which is difficult when situations are tense, emotions are running high, and we're just trying to maintain order. We want to be thoughtful about how we use our words, because what we say can escalate or de-escalate a situation. And so how important languaging is. So we also want to ask for more of what's working. Talked about this before. We're an additive society where we focus on, where what we focus on, we think about and we add to. So we want to add to what's working. If we notice that participants have really successful days or good behaviors when they're around a certain peer, or when they're working on a certain kind of activity, then we want to give them more and more of those opportunities in a healthy way. We also want to look at how we're empowering those individuals. So from the standpoint of encouragement versus praise. So we've all gotten praised probably in our lives growing up at some point, whether it was a teacher or a coach or a parent or a grandma. There has been probably some type of praise in your life where you have been acknowledged for doing a good job or for making a right decision. And a lot of times our participants have been praised as well, but not for their intrinsic value and their worth. So we want to make sure that they themselves see that. So with encouragement, we want to encourage the process so that it will be repeated rather than simply acknowledging the end result. So let's just think about this for a minute. So praise basically values my opinion. So if I say, oh, you did a good job on that, that's my opinion, rather than them being acknowledged for the hard work that they did. Oh, you did a good job on that is praise. Encouragement is, you worked hard to get this result on this project. Wow. It's admiring and acknowledging the work that was put into it. So for me, it's easy to think that encouragement is encouraging effort and praise is the end result. So encouragement encourages effort and praise is the end result is another way to think about it. So we want to encourage them and acknowledge and validate. So something like, it looks like you spent a lot of time thinking that through. That would be very encouraging for somebody who oftentimes just reacts, has a knee-jerk reaction to things, or is very impulsive. And appreciating helpfulness is part of encouragement. It's a big help when you are cleaning up in the kitchen, or when someone's feeling down. You may not feel like you've reached your goal, but look how far you've come. You're encouraging improvement and pushing them to continue to achieve, rather than just saying, good work. Praise is kind of easy. Encouragement takes more thought and effort on the part of the individual speaking. Scaling, I'll go over in just a minute, but you may have heard this or you may have been asked this. It's very much a therapist kind of move or a social work kind of terminology, but that is something that I'll review on the next slide. We also want to focus on exceptions. So maybe somebody has struggled to get out of bed on time for 4 days in a row, and this is day number 5, and they are out and on time and ready to go. We're going to focus on that exception and not talk about how awful the other 4 mornings were when we were arguing potentially, and maybe they didn't earn their balanced living, things like that. We're not going to focus on that. So what we are going to focus on, that's not helpful to focus on past failures. We don't want anybody bringing up our own past failures. That doesn't make us feel like we're been acknowledged for the new leaf we've turned over or new decisions we've made. So instead, we want to focus on that exception to where, we do see a good attitude. That moment where they are being respectful of others. That moment where they have been empathetic and kind, where they usually are maybe withdrawn and stoic. So we want to focus on those exceptions. And then we also want to kind of track and punctuate. So this is helpful when we are with a participant who may not want to be there, I know, or may be, having a really bad day. When they're talking to you, maybe they're screaming. I hear what you're saying. We're punctuating. We're in between their, conversation. We're tracking with them. I hear what you're saying. It sounds like that was a really terrible experience. I hear what you're saying. It sounds like you really are missing your mom right now. I hear what you're saying. It sounds like you're really wanting to run at the moment and you're really trying hard not to. Just punctuating and validating what they're saying so that they feel heard and acknowledged. And then we also want to focus on the concept of practice. At Wellspring, we know that there are going to be times when people are not going to make the best decisions, but we want to give them opportunities and practice to continue making wise choices and good decisions with their lives. So what that looks like is making sure that we are not punishing them or thinking that they're never going to get it right, but rather focusing on it as a new skill. This is a new opportunity for you to grow and learn and achieve. So let's think about it in terms of practice. When we try something new, for our participants, that may be a new social skill. It may be coping skills. It may be being back in school. When we're trying something new, that it can be difficult and it's hard for other people to watch us not be successful. So we want to focus on the concept of practice. Maybe it didn't go your way yet today, but tomorrow is a new opportunity, or next time you can try again. So just being a concept of practice. So I was going to talk about scaling from our previous slide. Scaling's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, but it can get complicated in your brain as you're talking through it in a conversation. So a scaling exercise, you might ask a participant on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best, how do you feel about the changes you've made since coming to Wellspring? The benefit of scaling is that it asks the participant to go inside of themselves and look introspectively and think through their own decision making, their own effects of their decision, consequences of their decisions, progress that they've made, goals they've achieved. This question has a lot in it that's asking the participant to really think. And so we want to focus our time with participants in a positive way and giving them opportunities to reflect and think, and really challenging them to think about their changes during their time here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you utilizing or using the new coping skills you're learning? So this might be after you've seen a participant be really successful in coping with a situation that made them really angry, but they didn't act out aggressively on that anger. And so you've seen them choose to be successful. So we want to kind of continue that idea of success. So you might suggest this question. You can also think about it in terms of kind of this picture of balloons. Sometimes it's hard for kids to talk through numbers, kids or adults for that matter. So we could have it on a picture of balloons that are scaling upward. We could also have it for little kids. It's helpful, to use your hands and motions. So you might spread your hands apart 5 inches or something and say, is it this much? Or you might open your arms out wide and say, or this much, which can be helpful too for people who do better with kind of physical or kinesthetic, more tactile learners. So some questions to consider with the strength-based approach. If all that others knew about themselves was what we were thinking about them, how would they feel about themselves? This question is always very convicting in trainings that we do. It's always convicting for me every time. So if all that others knew about themselves was what we were thinking about them, how would they feel about themselves? So this relates to our attitudes towards participants, towards those we work with, towards our supervisor, to those we supervise, to board members, to volunteers that we interact with. So we want to be careful of our thoughts. We know that our thoughts lead to actions. And when are moments you feel the most human with those you work with? When do you feel you are really making an impact with them? This question is also can be something that's very difficult, but also helps us realize why we come to do this work every day. When do you feel you're making the most impact? In the same way, I would encourage a participant, when are you feeling the most impact from being in this program, to continue to do those, continue to do what's working. As well, I would encourage you to continue to try to have those moments where you feel the most human or where you feel like the most impact. Obviously, we all have duties and responsibilities, things that have to get done. But how can you work these other elements into the day as well? And then last on this slide, what are strengths you've discovered in yourself in relating to and engaging with your clients? So of course, this is easier to do when we're in a group in person. But just think about that. What strengths have you discovered? And so to be thoughtful, this is another element of this lesson 3 in the web-based strength-based training. I'd love for you to think of a time where you were younger and an adult gave you a compliment or said something positive to you that made a bit of difference. So think about that for just a minute. And we're going to go through some questions. Who was it? What did they say? How'd you know it was sincere? This is important. We can think of people who are super nice to our faces, but we're not necessarily sure we believe them. How did it impact your behavior, self-image, and mood in that moment when an adult said something positive to you? What knowledge or skills did you pursue and develop as it related to that compliment? Did it influence your choice of work or career? How does remembering impact you now? So this is an activity I'm going to ask you to do as these lessons continue with this strength-based 3 of 4. So questioning and listening for resources. Remember I talked about looking and listening and making sure we're paying attention. So we want to find out really who and what is important to them. What's their motivator? Why are they here? What keeps them going? It can be different for everybody. It could be a family member. It could be a goal or a dream that they have of the future. It could be that they don't want to go back to what they're coming from in the past. And it could be this, maybe the idea of getting their kids back in their custody, or continuing to be substance free, not being dependent on anyone financially. It could be a whole host of things. So who and what is important to them? Where have they been successful? Where have you noticed success in the past? What's their idea of the problem? Why are they here? A lot of times they don't know. A lot of times they're not sure that they agree with you or whoever about why they should be here. So what's their idea? This gives us a lot of insight into their kind of point of view. And what's their idea of the solution? So this can occur when someone is having a complaint. Maybe this is an advocacy or grief meeting. We want to hear their idea of the problem and their idea of the solution. And that gives us a lot to go with as far as figuring out how to best serve them in our program and for them to get the most impact from Wellspring. We want to make sure that they're leading their version of a happy and successful life, not our version of their happy and successful life. So I want to hear what their version of success looks like. So ways that we look for strengths informally. We want to notice and listen. Talked about that before. We also want to hear comments from others, maybe other staff members, paying attention to the log or maybe some shift notes. We want to hear where they've been successful from others, potentially through their peers. Maybe we don't ask, but we just pay attention. We're just listening. So we want to make sure we're looking for those things. And then we can also look formally through screens and assessments. You may have heard of Strengths Finders. That's something that the Women's Academy has implemented through their corporate partnership recently. So that's really exciting. There's all kinds of tests online. You know, you can think back to taking quizzes and magazines maybe that you looked at as a teen or growing up. It's just people like to learn about their strengths and their own positives. Self-reports, where are they feeling the strongest? Each program participant takes a participant assessment where they assess themselves and their progress every month or every other month. It depends on the program. So at least every 60 days, there's a self-report out there available for you to see if you want to look at it. And then other kinds of surveys, of course. So just going back to problem versus solution focus with this whole idea of strength-based treatment or strength-based problem solving, we know that there are two sides to it, and we want to remain on the solution focus side. So problem focus really gathers information to identify a problem. You may have had to do this with a critical incident that occurred in order to investigate the solution. Sometimes we have to do that in our programs to keep everybody safe, right? Well, solution focus really asks the person how they want life to be different. So again, we're looking at their version of success and their version of what they want to change in their lives. We might see all of these things that they should want to change, should, and they might not see that as necessary. Maybe they can live with those things because they have so far. So we want to hear their version. Problem focus really speculates about the underlying cause of something. Why is it that this happened? We're really thinking through. It could have been this, it could have been that. Solution focus really attends to experience or times when the aspect of the solution is already happening. So we want to talk about not just the reason for this happening, that's problem focused, but we wanted to look at where they've already been successful. So if we're talking about pushing through and earning an apprenticeship or something like that, and they don't feel like they can do it, and they don't think that they have what it takes, we want to make sure that we ask them, okay, well, where's another time in your life that you pushed through when something was difficult and achieved that? Even if it was way back in kindergarten, and they won the art award or whatever it is, we want to think through, give them an opportunity to think, oh, well, I remember how hard it was to ride a bike or something like that. It could be anything. So we want to focus on those experiences where there's been success before. Problem focused, based on what the real cause is, prescribe treatment to fix problem or reduce symptoms. It's all about reduction of symptoms and making things better, more palatable. But solution focus really asks them to develop a specific vision or a desired outcome of that vision. So we want them to focus on those goals, those dreams, what they can achieve, and then continue to encourage that they have the tools they need to be successful. And so this is my last slide, getting started the strength-based way. You want to listen and get curious. Some curiosity questions might include asking them things like, what do you want your life to be like down the road? What's the most important thing that ever happened to you? Sometimes with trafficking survivors, we think it's the trafficking that is the most traumatic or the most difficult for them. And sometimes it is, and oftentimes it's something that's very different that was most hurtful for them. If you had the perfect day, what would you do? Where would you be? Who'd you be with? That's something fun to do with people of all ages. So just get curious about them. Have some tools in your pocket when you find yourself alone with a new participant or with somebody who's waiting on a family visit or walking over to a therapy appointment. Give in-the-moment feedback about accomplishments. When you notice something positive and a positive change, say something. I'm trying to do that more and more in my personal life as well. When I notice something I like, why am I keeping it to myself? I need to say something. It really helps others to continue to feel good about their accomplishments. Notice positive changes. We're always looking to observe and notice things that are positive. Identify strengths in everyday actions. So we want to make sure that we're looking for ways that they've been successful already. We want to encourage. And encourage, remember, is encouraging effort and the process that it takes so that that can be repeated and transferred to other processes and other efforts that they might make in other areas of their lives. We want to celebrate small successes because small successes lead to big changes. So it's really noticing those things in the moment and saying them out loud. And that concludes our strength-based webinar 3 of 4. So pay attention, and I'll be back for strength-based webinar 4 of 4.